Hello there, Di here. Today I'm making a card using watercolours on watercolour paper for a niece who's just moved houses, so I thought the Toadstool would be a nice whimsical image to use. This is a Stacy Yacula stamp from Purple Onion Designs. I'm stamping in an archival ink. It's black. I don't want too much of an outline. I just want the merest faintest image there to be able to paint around, so I'm stamping it off the first, I think, 4 images onto white cardstock there and getting a much paler image each time. The last one I go, which is the 5th image, gives me enough of an outline to be able to colour it quite happily. Cleaning off the stamp and removing it from the sticky layer that holds it in place while it's on my stamp press. And now I'm getting out the distress inks, and this one's Mowed Lawn, then we've got the red is Barn Door, and the last one is Wild Honey. Now I'm painting this dry onto the dry watercolour paper and just adding water as I need it, trying to get the colours nice and deep. I might I'll be adding more layers as the layers of paint dry. So I'll be going back in and adding more, and in a moment you'll see I'll be adding some more colours to that palette there. I've seen people using this palette, which is what I've used for some time for watercolouring, and it's really just a piece of white cardstock put through my laminator. It gives a nice white surface. The second green that I'm using, you saw me put it on the palette just then, and that was peeled paint. Now I'm going in with some Barn Door and starting to colour in the top of the Toadstool, and just working at building up the colours and getting some shading, getting some dimension into that rather flat image. I do get the light source. I tend to forget. I get beavering away and get into the zone, as it were, and forget little things like light sources, and I guess that comes with experience, and the more you do, the better you get. I guess I'm using 2 lights on my dark dungeon of a crafting space, and so I've got a light coming from each side, so you'll just have to excuse me for getting confused about it. I'll work on that. There's some wild honey going into the little flowers, and now I'm adding some old paper onto the stalk and under the gills of the toadstool, while the grass and the toadstool cap dry. It's quite important when you're using distress inks for watercolouring, or watercolour paints the same, or other inks. They do require drying time, and I don't normally like to use my heat tool to dry. I'd like to let things dry normally, but today I did use the heat tool. It's speed things up for the video. I put a little bit of wild honey in under the top of the under the gills there, and now I'm applying some gathered twigs, just adding to that definition. Going back and smoothing out that gathered twigs. Looks a bit stark. I don't know if you can hear my cat. He's at it again. He doesn't come out, doesn't make a sound until I close the door, and then he starts howling. He does not like to think he's missing out on something. Just building up those layers of slightly darker paint to try and get some dimension in there. This is a lovely little image. I love colouring it in. I've used it many times with pencils and watercolours and paper piecing, and it always looks good. I think I'm adding a little bit of the fired brick at this stage. It's getting some layers of deeper colour. I'm very careful around the edges. You don't want those colours mixing and getting muddied up. You want them to stay well defined. So I'm trying not to add too much water on this section, so that because it's quite a large area, so it can dry more smoothly and quickly. Adding a bit of definition to those flowers, giving them some petals, doing a bit of fiddling about with the colour. Here I got out my Inktense pencils, and I think that one's Baked Earth. Just a little bit of definition around the edges, and again around the gills. It does make a difference, putting those little strokes of colour in. This one is Poppy Red. I don't have that many Inktense pencils. I think I've only got a 12 set, but they are delicious to use. The colour's beautiful. And this one I think is maybe apple green. That's about it for the Toadstool. I'm going to put that aside and let it dry and get on with painting the background, which is just going to be a colour wash. You see how quick that piece of laminated paper is to clean. You just have to wipe it off with a baby wipe or a damp towel, and it's ready to go with a different range of colours. And they last pretty well. I've been using this one for ages now. What have we got here? We've got tumbled glass. We've got, I think that's broken china, and the last one is chip sapphire. And this time I'm using a wet wash. I'm applying some water with a wider brush. I had my old easel out the other day, and we packed all my brushes into it, and then my son put it away. All my brushes have been packed away in the easel, so I'm a bit limited. It doesn't really matter for washes. I think sometimes you're freer with a big brush. So I'm just getting in and laying down the first layer of colours. You see me trying to pick cat hairs off. I really do think that my cards and other things that I make, my journals particularly, there's so much adhesive used on them, they really should come with a health warning. May contain traces of cat. Seemingly it's impossible to keep the cat hair out of things. Here I go in with the next layer. It's not absolutely completely dry, but it's dry enough, and really you want some of that colour to be mingling and merging with it. You don't want clearly defined layers. Putting in a bit of yellow there to brighten the background, give it a bit of a highlight. Giving it another little dry there. Just emphasising that patch of wild honey. Strengthen the colour a bit. Now I've got some, I think it's Heidi Swap gold spray that I'm flicking onto the, haven't used that for absolutely ages, and I thought I'll put a bit of glitz into it. I had to shake it for about 5 minutes to actually get the little ball to release. Now I'm removing the post-it tape from around the edge and setting that aside to dry while I fussy cut out the Toadstool image. I'm not cutting it out too closely, leaving a bit of a line around it. I need it to look quite whimsical. It's not meant to be realistic in any way. And the bit of an outline just gives it a clearer definition against that washy background. It's probably the thing I'm least confident about is fussy cutting. I don't enjoy it, but there we go. Now I'm going in with the white gel pen and layering up the Toadstool cap with a few little white dots just to give it a bit of a pop. Different sizes, but just to finish it off. And the blue piece, you can see I'm going to do a sentiment, just a congratulations. I'll put the rest of the sentiment on the inside of the card for my niece. You can see I'm religiously using my stamp positioner. There it is, it's cut out, it's gold embossed, just to match those gold sprays. I've put some foam squares on the back to give it a bit of height, bit of dimension, positioning it on the card. I'll use a slightly I'll use the foam tape on the back of this to give it it's less height. The little foam squares are a little taller. I didn't want to increase the height too much here. I just wanted it to be raised slightly from the edge of the card. And positioning that little sentiment banner across the bottom of the toadstool. Removing more cat hair. And that's about it. I'll have a still photo at the end so you can see it. Thanks so much for watching. A fun card. Bye now.